Welcome back, and since my last video, he hasn't moved. I don't think he's gonna either. I think he's there for a while. Well, now that I've said that, he's gonna get up and move. Now, when we're talking about franchise low points for Tampa, yes, the lowest point, it would seem, happened last spring. A team with 62 wins gets swept in the first round by the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, conversely, had never won a round in the playoffs. Yeah, that's about as low as it gets. And this is a team that has gone through its rebuilds. This is a team that's gone through some pretty rough patches when it comes to not making the playoffs. Between 97 and 2000, over a period of 3 seasons, this team put up 55 wins during that rebuild. They win the Stanley Cup in 2004, and then they have another rebuild. And, it's been interesting because we look at the last decade and we think about all the success they've had during the regular season, but it's definitely been fraught by some pretty rough low points as well. It has. Now, when looking at lost assets, I'm going to start there because Brad Richards stands out to me as a guy that they had to give up for cap reasons. And that's generally the way this works. You look at the guys they've lost, and it's generally been cap reasons. I have JT Miller, but I have a question mark there because Tampa had to lose JT Miller. You look at the record this year, it's not like they fell apart without JT Miller either. So, usually with the lost assets, you're looking at somebody and going, well, this was a horrible move. But maybe not. And then they pick up Coleman with the pick that they got for Miller. So they like picking up Coleman. See how it works out for him. And to me, the biggest asset I could find was Konechny, the Konechny pick that was in the Braden Coburn trade. That's about as far as I can get with finding something that I could say, well, that was a bad move. And it is a testament for how well they've managed their assets along the way, that I can't really find anybody that I say they went on and had tremendous success somewhere else that they didn't have in Tampa. I wanted to put up Marty St. Louis, but that trade honestly worked out pretty well for Tampa. I don't like how it happened. I don't like that Marty St. Louis didn't finish his career in Tampa, that he had to go back and he signed what? They signed that 1 day deal with them just to retire as a Lightning member, whatever he did. And I know everything's forgiven now, but really, it was a shame that had to happen the way it did. That's as far as I can get with lost assets. Now, what's interesting is most losses by a goaltender in a Tampa jersey is Darren Pupa with 91. And my reasoning for seeing that name there and not being necessarily surprised is Tampa doesn't hold on to goaltenders for very long. Andrei Vasilevsky very likely ends up at the top of that list. Vasilevsky ends up at the top of that list because he's going to be there for a while. He may be the first goaltender in Tampa's history that's going to stay there for a long time. Now, short-term coaches, they've had their share of those as well. Rick Patterson, 6 losses in his 6 appearances behind the bench. Barry Melrose. Who remembers Barry Melrose? This Stamkos kid isn't ready. Not ready, I'm telling you. He goes 5-7-4 as coach. He leaves, and then it turns out Stamkos is pretty ready. Whoops. Stamkos played really well in his rookie year once the coaching change was made. That could be considered a low point too, I guess. It is really hard to find low points with Tampa, even though their longest drought was from 1997 through to 2002. They went 6 seasons without playoffs. And then in 2003, they made the playoffs again. So they had their drought, absolutely. But again, I've got the 55 wins there from 97 through 2000. And when your team wins the Stanley Cup in 2004, it doesn't feel that bad. So is it worse right now with a team that's consistently playing well than it was with a team that was bad and then won the Cup a couple years later? I guess it's kind of worse now. But there are other franchises that would love to have that kind of down point where they've had a Stanley Cup in the last 20 years. Year 1, 92-93, they had a record of 23-54-7 for 53 points. They went with a more veteran lineup than the Ottawa Senators, who chose the bold strategy of picking mostly guys that weren't really made to play in the NHL. And, of course, for Tampa, the odd part of that is that they went the veteran route, which Ottawa didn't, the expansion draft, and yet Ottawa got better sooner than did the Tampa Bay Lightning. But Tampa Bay won a Stanley Cup, whereas Ottawa didn't. Yeah, it is up to you guys to decide which franchise over its existence you'd think has the better history. And if your answer is, well, Tampa won a Stanley Cup, so they have the better history, we think the same. 0203, year 11 of this franchise, they were 36-25, 16-5, 93 points. They were in the playoffs that year, and they won the Stanley Cup the next year, where they were number 2 overall. So it didn't take long after their last playoff miss in 2002 before they're Stanley Cup champions. That's how quick it can happen. Their lowest points percentage against any team in the NHL, Washington. 385 winning percentage against Washington. Goals for per game, their lowest total is against Minnesota. Minnesota Wild apparently have been pretty good defensively because they keep showing up on the board. 2.25 goals per game against the Minnesota Wild. Goals against per game against Vancouver, they've allowed 3.51. Of course, Vancouver against Tampa this year had their challenges in that one game that was an ugly, ugly, ugly game. So maybe this is what they were looking at before the game. Cooper sends around, hey, guys, check it out. Hey, coach, thanks. Oh, look, Vancouver's got this goals against us. We allow the most goals against Vancouver historically. Let's go out and destroy them. Let's go destroy the Canucks. And they did. Now, lowest points per game, and this is, of course, with the minimum of 100 games played, as all the videos in this series have been. Matt Smaby, .049. There you go. He played 100 games for them. Matt Smaby's on the board. Chris Dingman, .081. Not known as a point producer in his career either. Stanislav Netskash. That doesn't look like Netskash, but that is how it's pronounced. For years, I just... Neckar, right? Neckar? No, Netskash. .092. Nolan Pratt, .096. And Rudy Poshek with a .099 points per game over his time with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, lowest save percentage, minimum of 50 games played. And there are a ton of goaltenders who've played for Tampa. They've had 47 goaltenders in their history. To put that into perspective, Ottawa's used 38. So that's a lot of goaltenders Tampa's used in their history. And the quickly leaving goaltending problem is why Pupa's still your loss leader with 91 losses. Now, Jean-Claude Bergeron, 867 save percentage is the lowest among goaltenders with 50 or more games played. Pat Jablonski, 870. Mark Denis, 879. Mark Denis, one of those goalie of the future jinx type goaltenders, I think. There may be a video on that if it hasn't already been done. Dan Cloutier, 887 with Tampa, and then of course he went to Vancouver. His save percentage of Vancouver was very good. So when we get to Vancouver on this board, I don't expect to see Dan Cloutier on the board other than maybe over here because that goal from center ice kind of stands out as a low point for the Canucks. Goaltender with the best name, Kristers Gudlevskis. Absolutely the best name. And played very well in international hockey, and I kept thinking, if Gudlevskis gets a shot at a job in Tampa, and then it just didn't work out. And of course, I have to have Nikolai Habibulin, who is also over here. Habibulin, the highest in their wins total, with goaltenders who are not in the Hall of Fame, and retired. Nikolai Habibulin's the guy, and I can't make the argument Habibulin belongs in the Hall of Fame, but his name does, right? As Don Taylor used to say, he makes the save with his left Habby, or was it his right Bulin? And then Vinny Lecavalier is their all-time points leader among retired players who does not have a Hall of Fame place as of yet. Vinny Lecavalier is one of those guys that the argument can be made for him going to the Hall of Fame. The argument can be made against him going to the Hall of Fame. I personally probably don't put him in the Hall of Fame. And one of the criteria that gets used a lot is how long was the guy at an elite level? And for me with Lecavalier, he was elite, but for how long? And then was it long enough to put him in the Hall? Are there other guys you can argue are weaker cases for the Hall? That's certainly a conversation for another time, but it is a debate about Lecavalier and whether or not he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Maybe this is the year he gets in, maybe next year, maybe 10 years down the road. You can never tell. Sometimes they put somebody in the Hall of Fame long after they're eligible. Hockey, you just can't tell. But when you look over their history, the things that stand out for me with Tampa is when they're good, they're excellent. And recent history shows they've been excellent, but now we're starting to discuss their playoff struggles. Stamkos, with his struggles in Game 7s, absolutely stands out. And of course, as I've said, the sheer turnover with goaltending, which it feels like with Vasilevsky, is finally done. Although there's kind of a revolving door when it comes to backups. And maybe that'll get straightened out soon as well. it is one of those things where it feels kind of nitpicky now because they do have Vasilevsky. They do have that goaltender they can build around, but there's always going to be salary cap stuff too. So again, with the lost assets, I could have put Ben Bishop up there, but Bishop, it was a cap move, and again, this is something that they deal with. We may very well see them have to dump other guys this summer in order to keep things together. That's kind of what happens when you have a very good team and you have a lot of good players. You're going to have to pay them good money, and as a result, you're probably not going to be able to keep everybody together. So it's hard to rate that as a lost asset in terms of how I've been doing the lost assets for other teams, where it's more of a they probably should have held on to this guy. In this case, they couldn't hold on to these guys. So, again with Richards, it was kind of the same thing. It was they can't keep this whole core from the '04 Stanley Cup win together. They're going to have to decide between Richards, LeCavalier, and St. Louis. And Richards was the one they decided to move on from. And then, Dallas, he made a lot of money, and he had some controversy when it came to how much money he made and whether or not he was worth the value of the contracts as his career went along. Again, that's for more of a career video on Richards. But it is interesting to me that a team like Tampa that's had those long stretches really hasn't had the kind of struggles that you would anticipate you'd see in a video like this, especially when you consider in 2019 they're the absolute best in the league during the regular season. Can't win a game in the postseason. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.